Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. In this week's video, what we're going to do is look at the advanced locomotion system again, and we're going to look at adding some more features to it. In the previous video, what we did is we added a line trace system so we can actually fire the guns, and this only works if we are aiming down sight. As you can see now, if we try to fire, we get a not aiming message, and also if we don't have a gun in the hand, we won't be able to fire. So for example, if you've got a torch, you've no weapon equipped, so you can't fire a torch. But this week what we're going to do is we're going to add a crosshair to the game. Crosshairs are pretty self-explanatory. They make it easier to aim your weapon, and also what we can do is we can actually get the position of the crosshair on the screen and make sure the line trace matches up with it perfectly. There are a few different ways to set up your ray trace system, and by that I mean, sorry, I said ray trace, and I meant line trace. They're the same thing, just different programs use different names. There are different ways to set it up. Now, what I mean by that is, there's a YouTuber called Garbage, and I'll link his video down below. He explains this problem very, very well, and I recommend that you go and watch his video as well. Essentially what happens is, if you choose to shoot from the camera to the center of the screen, there's a chance that with your character being slightly to the left of the center of the screen, that you can shoot around objects. But what you could do is you could set the line trace to come from the barrel of the gun to the center of the screen, but that also has some complications. Please watch the video that I'll link down below, and if I get a chance, maybe now, I will put a little clip of maybe one of the games that I play, just explaining and showing this detail. Okay, so if we look at this here, you can see that the crosshairs are actually on the wall, but if we was to aim and fire, we're actually shooting the wall even though that it's right next to us. So technically the gun would be poking out past the wall, but it's still managing to shoot this wall. Now, because of this, what I think's happening is they're actually projecting from the camera to the crosshair, and then they're just faking the fact that the bullet's coming from the gun. That's why it's hitting it. However, my theory is actually thrown a little bit here, because here you'd expect us to shoot the grass in the distance, but the bullet's still coming from, it's still hitting the wall because it's in the way. But yeah, let's get into the video. So to start with, what we want to do is we want to open up the blueprints folder and the character logic folder and open up our shooter BP that we created last time. In here, it should take you straight to the line trace that we created in the first video. And also what we want to do is we need to put a crosshair on the screen. So we need to go back to the blueprints folder, go to the UI folder, and then in here you should see something called ALS HUD. And also, just a quick note, this arrow graphic here is what I'm going to use as my crosshair, just because it comes with this locomotion system, and I know that everybody's got it, but you could quite easily just add in another texture to the game, a crosshair of your choice, and use that. That's absolutely fine. So, but while we're here, we're going to open up the ALS HUD. And as you can see, there's a little green arrow already here. Now that's used to identify your character when you're playing. If I just load up the game here and press I, you'll see that there's a little arrow above your head. That's already in use. However, what we're going to do is we are going to duplicate this just to make it a bit easier for us to set up. This is already set up inside a box and stuff like that. That's great for us. So we're just going to right click on this arrow and hit duplicate, and you should get arrow 1. If you click on it again and wait, you get to be able to rename it. I'm just going to put crosshair. And then what we need to do is we need to minimize some of these. I think I've just made that worse, to be honest. Let me scroll up. We need to minimize these panels because we need to move that crosshair out of the way. Get rid of some of these. Okay, so now I have actually lost that crosshair. There we go, crosshair. So I'm just going to make this panel a little bit bigger, and I'm going to drag crosshair to my canvas panel 0. And that seemingly didn't do much, but now it's on top of all of these panels, which is great. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select it. I'm just going to mouse wheel in, scroll in just a little bit. Now, at the moment, this crosshair is in the center of the window, which is brilliant. However, as you can see, the green arrow is not in the center of the screen. It's kind of offset a little bit. So my target is to get this point here to the center of this anchor. And the best number that I've found for this is in the position Y is to put -9. And this is really close. I guess we could put 9.5 or maybe -10 or 10.5. 10.5 looks pretty accurate. That'll work. So now that's in the center, we're absolutely done with the HUD itself. So we'll compile and save. You shouldn't get any errors, and then we can close that. So now what we need to do is we actually need to get a reference to that HUD, find the crosshair, and get its position. So to do that, I'm just going to go from the event begin play, because the crosshair itself is never actually going to change place, but where it is pointing to in the world will, but that's fine. But so from the event begin play, what we're going to do is we are going to cast to the ALS player. Actually, let's just right click here first, cast to ALS player controller. Off the object, we're going to get player controller. Why is that not there? There we go, get player controller. Not sure why that wasn't the first thing recommended. We're going to link this up to here. So the reason that we're actually going to the player controller is if I go back to the blueprints folder and the character logic and open up the ALS player controller, you can actually see here that we're actually creating and adding the HUD to our viewport. So within this player controller, we've got this reference here as the HUD, and this will have all the locations of all the graphics on the screen. So at the beginning of the game, we're just going to cast to our controller, and then from that we can get the ALS HUD, and this will now allow us to tap into that crosshair. Now I can't remember which way I need to do this around. I think it might be get crosshair, and then I think it's slot as canvas panel. Yeah, I think that looks right. And then as the canvas slot, we can get position. So hopefully now we should have the position of the crosshair, which will be right in the center of that sort of the anchor, which was that white star. If I go back, I'll just show you. Blueprints, UI, and ALS HUD. So essentially, where the center of this white star is what's called the anchor. And if we get the position, it takes it from that. So the position should be exactly where we want. So now what we need to do is we need to get this position, which is an X and a Y, and we need to feed that into the game and say I want a position in my world that's behind it. Now what that means is you can see where the crosshair is now. So essentially, if I want to go from the screen into the world, I want it to be shooting that barrel now. Now I want it shooting the cube. Now I want it shooting that bench. the fountain, you know, and I want it to aim into the world exactly where that crosshair is. So we actually need to project this 2D canvas value into the world, into 3D space. So to do that, it's something like get 3D. Can I drag off this? Get position 3D. Let's just right click and turn context off. 3D position. 2D world. Nope. World position. Have a look. Project world location to widget. I need the opposite of that. World position. Have a look. Convert mouse location to world space. Convert screen location to world space. No, I don't think that's it. Screen location to world space. Screen X, screen Y. World location. This could work actually. So let's have a look. So if we get the canvas position and we split it, we'll get this X and Y. So we plug them in. And then the target is player controller, which we can get controller. Okay, let's tick that box again. There we go. Hit compile. So we've got no errors so far, so that's good. Okay, so now we've got a world space location. Now really we want that to be our end position. So let's have a look here. The forward vector of our character, that can stay there, that's fine. But then our viewpoint location, I'm going to change this node here to our world location. So what we're doing here is we're saying I want to get the direction, the forward vector, which is essentially which way are we facing. I want to get that information. I want to get how far I should fire in that direction. But I want my position to be taken from where my crosshair is, and that's where I want my end location to be. And we're starting from where our character's eyes are. Now, let's compile that and let's just see what that does. So let's get out a rifle, and if I aim at this pillar and fire, we are getting quite close. So I just want to get close to this wall and just see what effect this is going to have. If I was to aim for his head, as soon as he goes behind the wall, I can't fire, so that's good. And pretty close actually. So it is slightly off to the right, and that's because it's taking the character's eyes. Now, this is where we've got a decision to make. At the moment, we are aiming for the center of the screen. However, it's coming from the actual character in the world's eye location. So that is probably more true. That's probably more true. But the problem is the position that the gun is firing to the crosshair isn't accurate. Again, as I had said at the beginning, the video by Garbage, which I'm going to link down below, explains this really well, and he creates some scenarios in his world to explain that really well. Please watch that. That'll explain what I'm talking about better than I am. But what we can do is, instead of getting our character's eyes viewpoint, let's just cancel that. What we can do is every game that you make in here, you get a camera manager. And the camera manager is basically as far back as you can go within your character to see what cameras are available to be used. Essentially, any camera in the scene goes through the camera manager. So if we get the camera manager, because you can see here in the hierarchy, there isn't actually a camera, and that's because in the advanced locomotion system, the camera system is a separate entity which just bolts on to the character, and it kind of handles its own blueprints. But if we tap into the camera manager and we get the actor location, if we get the actor location as the start, now in theory, if we fire now, your aim is going to be perfect, exactly where that point is in the world. So now if I go to shoot this guy in the head, you can see that as long as where I'm aiming, it'll be absolutely perfect. Now, the drawback of this is if I go to shoot here, I'm still going to be able to shoot that guy, even though my gun is behind the wall. Now, there are some things that you can do to work around this. You can do another check to say if we can actually set up two line traces. One where the gun, it fires from the barrel into the world and says, if this fails because I've hit a wall, don't fire the gun in general, or hit the wall in front of me. Or if I'm close to an object, you can switch between which line trace that you do. So one other thing that we can do, let's have a look, is, so here we're actually running, just before we proceed, we're actually running two systems here. We're actually saying, I want to get my character's, the angle of my character from the actual character itself, because that's more accurate, but then get the location of my camera to start from, because this ultimately just makes it a little bit more accurate. And then we're getting our end position from where our crosshair is. One other thing we can do is the start position can actually come from the barrel of the gun. So let's have a go at this and let's just see what effect that has. And this is what I said at the beginning. There's so many different ways you can do it, but they've all got pros and cons to it. No way is the perfect way. It's just the way which way you find easiest to deal with the sort of side effects of which one you pick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and find that the guns. So I'm going to go to props, meshes, and the M4A1. And essentially, because this is set up as a skeleton or a skeletal mesh, I should be able to find the tree, and I'm looking for the name of the barrel, which they've called muzzle. So I'm going to try and get the location of this muzzle and fire from here and see what effect that has. So this is another way. So let's have a look. So so we're getting the skeletal mesh. If it is valid, what I want to do is let's go for get socket. No. Get location. Alright, let's have a look. Skeletal mesh target. Okay. Skeletal mesh location. So get socket location, and the socket name was muzzle. And can I do an is valid on this one? Is valid AI location? No. Okay. the problem you've got with this, oh no, it should be okay. I was just thinking the problem you've got with this is this would fail if you've not got a weapon equipped. But to be honest, if you've not got a weapon equipped, this isn't valid anyway. So that should be fine. So if we get our start position from the muzzle location, hit compile and play. Now, if I've typed that in right, now the line trace is actually coming from the end of the gun, and it should go to the crosshair. So now, in theory, you should be able to block that, and also you should be able to get a headshot. Now look, here's a problem. I'm aiming at this guy's head, but it's shooting the wall next to him. So as you can see, this is actually more accurate now, but that position's going to change because the gun's in the character's hand, which is over to the left. So these are the complicated things that you've got to deal with, and it won't be the case of, you might be thinking, can I not just move the crosshair over to the left a little bit? And it doesn't work like that, unfortunately, because as you move and the sort of objects that you're stood behind also move, in effect it changes where your gun's going to shoot to. Because if I was just to move this over by let's say -25, compile and play, you know, at the moment that looks better. However, when you get here, it's still miles away. So let's just undo that, put that back, compile. So for me, actually getting the muzzle locations worse, but keeping the camera's locations the best, because I know for a fact that every time, no matter what scenario I'm in, wherever that crosshair is, I'm always going to shoot that. And I'm just going to need to do a second check here to say, well, tell you what, if something's in the way, let's just hit that. So what you could do is you could set up a second line trace coming from the muzzle, which I've just deleted, which is silly. Socket location, muzzle. You could do is, let's do, okay, so I've had a little bit of a play around. However, what I've decided to do is I'm actually going to leave it for this video, and I'm probably going to make the next video me focusing more on that, of ways to overcome certain things, because there are several ways you could do stuff. So like here we're aiming at that guy, but we're shooting the wall. So what I've actually done is I've actually put in 2 line traces, and you can see the difference between the two. So at a distance it doesn't actually make that much of a difference, but when you're up close, the difference between the two is significant. So I'm going to look into all the various ways that you can overcome it, and I'm going to make a video dedicated to that. Now, without sounding like a broken record, I do recommend you watch Garbag's video, because he explains it in such a brilliant way that if you like me and you like to see a visualization of all the scenarios, he does a really good job of that. So hats off to him. I'm personally in the group to go with the line trace on the right, the one that comes from the camera, because it's more right. However, you might prefer the one to come from the barrel for the more realistic. I'll leave that decision up to you ultimately. If you personally have already done a scenario like this and you've got ways around it, or you'd like to tell me what you prefer, which one do you prefer, coming from the camera, coming from the barrel, or maybe something completely different, please let me know down in the comments. But I'm going to have to leave this video here. appreciate if you've watched it to the end this far. Thanks for watching. If what I did cover in the video was of any use to you at all, please consider liking so I get that feedback and I know that people are liking what I'm putting out. If you are one of those that did like the video and you want to see more, please consider subscribing. I post a video every Sunday. Occasionally when I've got a bit more time and spare, I may put a video out on a Wednesday as well. But with enough said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in another video. Thank you.
Eyes on my display, you say we need a change, and I feel that you mean it. You mean it. But you're so right, we're losing track of time, buying things online and it's not like we need them.